Hi, welcome to this special program on BevCam. I'm your host, Walt Kosmowski, and I'm pleased to have with us Mayor Mike Cahill as our guest. Mike,
hey, Walt.
Welcome to BevCam.
Thank you. Thanks.
And we have imposed upon Mike to take time off from his duties at City Hall and join us here in the studio on a program that we're calling Mayor Mike Cahill, the First 100 Days. And Mike, before we get into specifics, let me ask you kind of a general question. You've been mayor now for a little over 3 months, and you must have had some expectations when you took office. And what are your initial thoughts now? How do your expectations measure up against your actual experience as mayor?
Well, first, it's been great. It's been great so far, and people have been wonderful. There's been a lot of great energy. People willing to step up and help out, people willing to give their opinions, and that's
Sure.
always good. In terms of expectation, I think people have asked me almost every day, what do you think? How's it going? Did you know it was going to be this much work? Well, of course I did. And I think probably more than anything, my feeling has been that everything about this job feels very natural. I've been in and around government, local and state government now for about 20 years. I've had the chance to work with many different agencies, with the business community, with the nonprofit community, with neighborhoods. So I've had the chance to do a lot of this work before, and it does feel very natural. And of course, no one person has every skill set or has the subject matter knowledge in every issue, which is why you have department heads and staff. And I've got a great team, from a combination of some great staff at every level at City Hall who've been working there for some time, to a very strong group that I brought in with me, and so it's been a wonderful experience so far. We've had right out of the gates we had some time sensitive and significant issues to deal with. I was sworn in January 6th, and within a couple of weeks we were before the Mass School Building Authority, knowing that we needed to conduct a process to determine what type of middle school we're going to build. Was a grade 6 to 8 or a grade 5 to 8. So we had a process for that right up front. We had the special election regarding the Brimble Avenue project on February 8th. So kind of front loaded with some big ticket items, but it's, at the same time, it's been great to work on some of the initiatives that I brought with me and I'm wanting to kind of get started and roll out. So it's a combination. I don't think there's any typical day, but each day has been full of interesting work and great people.
Yeah. Well, I think we'll be covering some of the issues that you just brought up here during the course of our conversation. And I have about 5 or 6 categories of questions I'm going to ask. And I think the first one, we want to ask you about economic development and the business, downtown business, and especially perhaps the waterfront, because there's a couple of things, a court decision that came down recently that kind of changed the formula down there. Can you address that?
Sure. Why don't we take them one at a time? You
Okay.
can kind of re-ask what I don't get to. But first I want to say, because I have been in office just about 100 days and spring is here. And, for everybody who thought this winter was never ending, including at some points me, never before have I seen the snow falling or seen the thermometer drop and only worried about the snow and ice budget like I do now. This has been a tough winter for that. And it's been a tough winter for people to be outside and to get around and be active. So, just everybody who's dealt with this winter and stuck it out, we finally have our reward. So happy spring. In terms of the questions you just asked, let's start with the waterfront.
Okay.
As you mentioned, there was, the city has tried for several years to develop the old McDonald's restaurant, which has been empty now for some time. And the state's highest court decided, probably a month into my term in office, that they weren't going to take up the appeal. And the appeal was of the appeals court deciding that the city really shouldn't have, or can't award the RFP the way they did. So it essentially brings us back to square one, which, there's a level of frustration with that, but at the same time, there's great opportunity at this point, because as I talked about during the campaign and as we've done since, I've met with the Secretary of Environmental Affairs, I've met with a number of people locally, and we've started the process of trying to change what's known as our designated port area. Yeah. Our waterfront from just about where the McDonald's property is, going out of the harbor towards the cove, If you go from the city's property down past the several properties that have largely recreational boating and a little bit of commercial fishing, and then you've got the condos, and then around the corner the yacht club, and then the beach, well, that's the designated port area. And for about 35 years, that status has been, kind of put onto that set of properties through a state law that was passed in 1978. It requires that you can only develop along that waterfront in a way that promotes kind of the traditional historic marine industrial uses. And given that our DPA, our waterfront, really hasn't functioned as a marine industrial waterfront for 50 or 60 years and really doesn't show any signs of going back in that direction, we really haven't been able to make productive use of our waterfront. So we've applied to the state to remove that designation in hopes that through a process that'll take about a year to a year and a half, we'll either get the designation removed or at least get it changed. We want some relief, and the more relief we can get, the better, because the more relief, the more flexibility we'll have in how we develop down there. And my goal is to develop down there in a way that will bring the whole community down. First, we do have some commercial fishing. We have some lobstering down there. We want to make sure we protect the ability of the lobstering fleet, the lobstering families who go out and make their living lobstering. We want to make sure we preserve their ability to have a place on our waterfront always. And with that said, there's really a demand for people to just have more access, a walkway that goes the whole length of that from beyond the old Morton Thiokol all the way down to the condos, so people can access it. We want more, I think, recreational boat slips. We want some restaurants and some shops and just the kind of things that'll bring the community down there and tie the waterfront to the rest of our downtown.
Right. So removing the DPA gives you a few more options to work with
right.
down there. Yeah.
And along with that, we will do a rezoning of our waterfront. And so we're trying to time that up to start a rezoning process at the same time as the DPA changes are being considered by the state.
And you say it might take about a year now. Or is that something that's decided by the state legislature? Or is it a state commission of some kind? Hearings? What's involved?
No, the Coastal Zone Management is the agency within the Environmental Secretariat that will be working with us and that will conduct public process. There is public process required with this. What they'll do is, now that we've applied for a de-designation, they will start what they call a border review. They'll look at the borders of our DPA and try to determine how's it being used, what's the capacity infrastructure-wise for the type of marine industrial that they want to see at waterfronts, and what's the potential for future marine industrial use versus the kind of uses that we're considering. So there's a process, and I think trying to be conservative, I think maybe a year and a half we'll get it done. We might be able to do it in a better time frame than that, but I think my goal right now is to get all of the process underway and completed so that we'll know what the rules will be going forward. How much relief will we have? How much greater ability will we have to shape the development on our waterfront? And hopefully that can all happen within the next year and a half.
Well, I'm sure the citizens of Beverly are happy that we didn't take that court decision kind of too seriously, or it didn't set us back, but we've taken the next steps already, which it sounds like the city is taking. Now tell us a little bit about business development in downtown Beverly. What's happening there?
Well, if you look at our downtown, we've got two main streets that are each about 1.5 miles long, right? Coming from the bridge, from the waterfront, breaking into Cabot and Rantoul, and then coming back together. There's been a lot of effort put by the city, by me when I was on the city council, by other folks, to trying to jumpstart the type of transit-oriented development, the type of more densely developed high-quality housing around the depot train station and kind of down that lower stretch of Rantoul Street towards the waterfront. And you see that, the fruit of that is starting to come. The idea being that with more people living downtown who have disposable income, want to step out their front doors and go out to dinner and go out to see a show and go do their shopping, at least some of the time, and not always get in the car to go and do what they're going to do. And that's I think, an important piece of our downtown's revitalization opportunity. When you then look up, and that can be connected to the waterfront very easily as these things start to come together. When you look up Cabot Street, kind of our traditional retail sector along Cabot Street, We've got some strength going on there. Our restaurant scene is very strong. The Larkham Theater has been up and running with a very active, calendar of events, and so that shows a lot of promise. We've got Montserrat College, Beverly Main Streets, and the city together went in on a grant application for a National Endowment for the Arts grant, and that grant was secured, and now we're in the process of developing a downtown arts and culture district. I think that will be critical to our future kind of identity economically as a downtown. So when you look at that and you kind of look in conjunction with some key landmark downtown properties, we have the Cabot Cinema that's up for sale. We have Casa de Moda that after 49 years, Jan and Don Preston are going to take a step back and enjoy the rest of their time. I think they have plenty of things going on in their days that they'll fill up once they've closed the store. But these are not a sign of an unhealthy downtown. These are generational transitions. The ownership group at the Cabot saved the Cabot 30 plus years ago and have stewarded that facility for a long time, and now it's somebody else's turn. Same with Casa de Moda.
Sure.
Bell Market, for generations was the market, the supermarket in the downtown. It hasn't really been viable in that way for some time. But the good thing is that on all three of these properties, there are with Bell and with Casa de Moda, there are new owners of the properties who are very actively and productively marketing them. And I've talked with people who are interested in going into those properties. And I think the wheels are in motion in a positive way. With the Cabot, similarly, there are groups interested in going in, and I think the key for the Cabot is that its future be one as a performing arts venue and kind of combination performing arts, movies, live shows, movies, cultural center, whatever that ends up being. It needs to be that draw that complements the rest of our downtown. And I think eventually, as you see that critical mass of activity downtown, that'll improve everybody's lot down there. The restaurants will benefit from the live performance and movies, and vice versa. I still think that we're close to a point where the visual arts can really take off in the downtown beyond the college and become economically viable with more and more galleries and such. So there's great opportunity right there in the downtown.
Absolutely. And I think the Casa de Moda property being taken over by Frank Kaminsky, who's one of the most successful business owners in Beverly, I think that is a very positive step. So I think we should look at that, like you say, very positively. And
along with that, it's the Goldbergs have bought Bell Market, so we've got two good new owners in these important properties who are looking to maximize those properties as really cornerstones of the downtown, which they've been for decades.
Now I'm gonna jump to infrastructure and capital projects, and I think there's three that people want to hear about: the middle school, Brimble Avenue, and the Rantoul Street. And let's just segue from what you were just talking about, downtown development. Of course, the Rantoul 1A reconstruction project. How does that fit in? Tell us a little bit about that. Where does that stand?
Sure. Now this will be a repaving from sidewalk to sidewalk from the bridge all the way down Rantoul, turning left as it remains 1A and going up past Dairy Queen to the railroad crossing. We've been working with the state from my first day in office, and it's been a challenge because the MBTA has been in charge of designing the crossings, the Kittredge Crossing and Gloucester Crossing, and it's been a challenge to move them along. The city work has been really kind of up and going, and we're ready, but the state work on those railroad crossing designs and also the state involvement in right-of-way work. There are over 200 property involvements. Most of them are temporary easements onto people's property for construction work. Some of them are permanent easements, and there are actually a few takings of pieces of property for the new kind of geometric outline of parts of the street. So these things are the kind of things that we've been trying to work through in order to get the state to put the project out to bid. And the hope right now is that the project will be out to bid sometime this summer and construction can start in the fall. That said, we've been in the street already. Our public services department has been in the street doing water work, water lines, and National Grid has been in the street doing utility work. So as a result, there's always a concern with the type of disruption and upheavals that people have to face, both living and working in that neighborhood. and for commuters moving through. So we started a mitigation committee, and we've got some of our best City Hall staff on that. And we also just put together a website for people to check. They can check it daily, they can check it weekly to make sure that they know what the activity is that's going on. For example, we know that just in the past couple of days, National Grid has started work between where the CVS is at Elliott and Rantoul and down towards Gloucester Crossing. So they've been working in that stretch of the road, and the plan was for them to get word out to those businesses and residents right along there and make sure that they know. And so we're working hard to make sure that the utilities and our own public works are working with those residents and business owners along Rantoul to make sure that they have what they need along the way. As I said, hopefully the project starts by this fall in terms of the state work. And it's, it'll be an ongoing challenge, but we'll all be better for it when it's done. And it will really, really brighten up and improve the streetscape in that whole corridor, and hopefully help to jumpstart our economy down there as well.
Now, you mentioned the website. You want to give us what that website is if people want to find out more about the 1A project?
I'm going to ask for
Okay,
you folks to put it on the screen.
Okay, we'll get it up.
Because
okay.
I know that you have it in the control room. You can put it up on the screen. I don't have it in my
right,
head.
we'll do that.
I'll get it wrong, but if you can put it on the screen, that'd be great.
And let me ask you another question. You mentioned that the city is doing some work there. How much of this project is funded by the state, and how much does the city have to put into it?
The city has paid for all of the design work, but for those two railroad crossings that are the MBTAs. So the city's paid for the design work along the way. State and federal funding will make up almost all of the roughly $20 million it's going to take to do the road. And there's a smaller amount that we're negotiating right now with the state. They'll pay a certain amount for lights. We're trying to push them to pay more for lights because there's a better design for the street lights that that doesn't throw light off into the atmosphere, but it kind of keeps it headed down and doesn't give what they call light pollution up above, and is in just a higher quality. So there may be some smaller amounts that we take on that we can't get them to agree to fund, but we're negotiating on that now. The overwhelming majority of the cost of the project is state and federal funds.
Right. Now let me we're not going to hold you to this, but just ballpark, when completion date, roughly, just kind of?
I do not know.
A year, 2 years,
once
3
we get
years?
them started, we'll be pushing them to work as quickly as possible, and some of it will depend on how next winter is. But
so it's a multi-year project.
It is certainly a multi-year project, and we're pushing them. We don't want now that we're doing the prep work and National Grid's doing the prep work that we were advised to get started with. We don't want the state to delay getting started with their part. So we're pushing on that front.
Right. Okay. So now let's talk about the new middle school. Bring us up to date on that, Mike.
Well, probably the most important point about the new middle school for everybody to understand is that while there was talk by the prior administration, and I understand there was this push to try to get it done, to have us in the school by September of 2017, in my second week in office, we met with state officials at the Mass School Building Authority, and they made it clear that that was a timetable that we weren't going to be able to make. They have listed out for us 5 separate phases of the project, and they've given us kind of a range of best and worst case timetables. We took the best case numbers on all 5 phases and added them together, and it puts us in the building December of 2018.
Okay.
So about 16 months later than everybody had been talking about. So I think it's important for people to kind of have our expectations reset. Now, we've worked very hard with MSBA to try to push the dates, and we've told them we want to beat the deadlines every step of the way. Now, partly due to the great work done by the prior administration last year, partly due to the attention we've been giving it since January, we've completed the phase that we just ended. We had till late summer this summer to finish that phase. We just finished it last month, so we shaved 4 months off of that. And now we're into the next phase, which is the feasibility study period. We've met with officials from Newton and Lexington and Wakefield. Newton and Lexington because they built schools, high-quality schools, and beat all the timelines. Okay. So we're meeting with them trying to learn how to beat the timelines. Yeah. We met with Wakefield because they're currently building a 5 to 8 middle school. And they've designed and are incorporating some of the things that parents want to make sure we have in our new 5 to 8 middle school. For example, building a lower 5-6 and an upper 7-8 middle school, keeping the 2 populations, 5th and 6th graders and 7th and 8th, largely separate. So physically, if you can plan for that, you can much better implement it, you'll have the appropriate space. And the layout of the building on the campus will be important for that purpose and for other academic purposes. So there's a lot to this. We're working hard to make sure that we are in as soon as we can be in, while building a high-quality school and keeping, under the budget that's been set. So it's an ongoing challenge, but there are a lot of great people at the table trying to make it happen.
Wonderful. Now, is it too premature to ask? I know there were a couple of scenarios: raise the existing building and build a brand new one, rehab it. Has that been decided yet, or is that still a decision down the road?
Sure. The period that we've just entered, we're in the process of hiring our owner's project manager. Then we'll, together with that firm, we'll hire the designer or architect. And then we start the we start the feasibility study, where we're going to be required to first look at Briscoe, because that's where the kids are now, and determine whether or not it's an appropriate site for the new school. We don't believe it is. The state officials acknowledge that they don't think it is. So we're going to have, of necessity, look at that site, but the expectation is we'll decide Briscoe, due to the building's realities and the smaller acreage footprint, isn't the appropriate place, and that Memorial is. Once we turn our attention to Memorial, we'll start to look at whether a renovation addition type of project makes sense, or whether a complete tear down and new construction makes sense, or whether some hybrid makes sense. Right. And that'll be the subject matter of the feasibility study, which will bring us eventually to a schematic design of the building as we think it needs to be built, and then a commitment by both the state and the city to funding each of our portions for the construction of the project.
Is it going to be similar to what the new Beverly High School was, the allocation of money, similar sort of?
Right now, the expectation is that roughly 52% will be provided by the state as a base, but they recalculate that each year.
Okay.
So we won't know what it's going to be until we're ready for them to approve the funding and so forth. But it kind of in that low 50s area, with an ability to gain incentive points for different things. For example, for more energy efficient design can gain you a couple of points. So it's at about between 51 and 52%. Our goal will be to get up to 55 or 56%. In other words, at the end of the day, the state will pay for about, say, 55, 56% of the project, and we'll pay the balance.
Right. Okay. Now, let me ask you about a project here that really was a lightning rod for citizen attention in the last year or so, and that's the Brimble Avenue overpass project. Tell us where we stand there, Mike.
As you know, it's a two-phase project. The idea being to build this new connector road at exit 19 at the Sawyer Road, Brimble Ave exit, northbound, both to improve traffic safety and traffic movement throughout that area, and to eliminate a number of left turn movements across lanes of traffic, which always have been very dangerous, to eliminate several and make others safer. And so that's the phase one of the project. As we all remember, the special election had to do with whether the city council's rezoning of the state-owned parcel to facilitate a land swap with the CEA group, so that parcels could be swapped and the new road built where CEA currently owns the land. That was the subject matter of that. What I said before the election was that, I supported the rezoning at the time based on the information we had, and I supported a yes on the special election vote to keep both roadway options alive. We needed at that time to keep both options alive, because our responsibility as a city is to present to the state a fully designed, fully permitted, buildable road. They can approve the road we can build. We can take that $5 million and use it to make these significant safety improvements and to jumpstart the economic development throughout the corridor. Right now, we are 4 months further down the road, and the time is coming near when we're going to need to make a final decision on which footprint to build the road, whether it's the existing footprint or the CEA property. And in order to gain a little more time on that front, we were able to convince DOT last week to fund taking the design for the build-in-place option, building where the current connector road is, take that design from where it stands to 25% designed. And that'll take about another month. And so they've committed to paying for that right now, so we don't lose any time. Because the reality is, we need to design, permit, and bid this road before a point later this calendar year when we would lose control over whether we get that grant money.
Okay.
We can't lose the grant money.
Okay, I see.
So there's a date coming very near to now, very soon, when we're going to have to decide which of the roadways is going to work and move forward with one or the other.
Okay. Now, I'd like to speed it up a little bit.
Sure.
Tell us a little bit about some of the green space and recreation initiatives. I know that the Beverly Rec Department has got some grants going. Tell us a little bit about that.
Right. No, very exciting. We just, and this is through the great work of our Park and Rec Department, we just got a $200,000 grant from the state to build a new playground at Lynch Park and also to put in a splash pool or pad. It's kind of, it's not a pool, you know, it's water coming down, water shooting up to cool kids and parents off during the summer. And the idea is that the construction on that will hopefully take place this fall. Can't be done before summer. We'd have the place torn up all summer long. Hopefully by the fall. And it's not been determined as a final decision where in the park that's going to happen. We're looking, you know, we're having conversations about that. Along with that, we're going to be putting new restrooms in at Lynch Park. But again, that will take place this coming fall, all of that work.
Okay. Norwood Pond.
Norwood Pond, I've talked about it for some time and worked with city councilors on it. We feel strongly that we need to take that roughly 100 acres of city-owned land that's zoned for conservation, but would be vulnerable to a future mayor and city council decision to take it out of conservation and put it to some other use. We don't want that to happen. With the Brimble Avenue project, Phase 2, going to develop some currently commercial industrially zoned parcels along Dunham Road, we don't want to lose that buffer and that resource of those 100 acres of conservation land. So we've been working with Essex County Greenbelt on drafting a conservation restriction, which I hope to bring before the council this spring, to put more permanent protections on that, on most or all of that property.
Okay. Now let me get to a little bit more general issue as our final topic, and I'll put it under the rubric of financial stewardship. And we have a stabilization fund. A lot of people don't know what that is, what's the use of that. Sure. And then talk a little bit about our bond rating and how does that our bond rating affect what we can do as a city. Maybe you can address those two things.
Sure. The stabilization fund, it's a simple concept, right? When you're able to put a little money away for a rainy day, stabilization fund, rainy day fund, same thing, you should. You know, and it's not to say that that we have more money than we know what to do with. That's not the reality at all. But we have the ability to put some away right now for those times when the economy turns down, state aid is cut, property tax revenues are harder to collect or they're harder to come by. So we've put $570,000 in a stabilization fund last month, and we will hope to do that again next year in some amount. The bond rating, our bond rating determines at what level we can borrow for our capital needs. And the city's bond rating got an upgrade from AA- to AA just this past month. So that's great news, and the bond rating has gone up consistently over time. And it just strengthens our position when it comes to issuing debt. And issuing debt is how we need to do some of our larger projects.
Well, Mike, we're just about out of time. I want to thank you for coming on the show. And I would just like to remind our viewers that Mayor Cahill has agreed that he would be coming into the studio every couple of months, every quarter, to do this kind of a program to bring Beverly citizens up to date on what is going on at City Hall and all of the wonderful things that are going on in our city. So this is Walt Kosmowski thanking you for joining us. You've been watching Mayor Mike Cahill, the first 100 days. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.